Now, because it's the weekend, because it's a Friday, because we're going to add to the stable for Colts players today, it is not my desire. It is not my interest. It is not my priority to begin today on a flippantly somber note. There's a ton to celebrate today, besides the fact that it's the weekend. For example, this is the final weekend before we can say it's a weekend in the month of May. And in the city of Indianapolis, there's no better time than the month of May. Even if you're not a fan, I get it. Even if you're not a fan of the Indianapolis 500 or the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you don't go to the parade, you don't do the many. I get it. It's not for everybody. But the month itself of May, the end of the school year coming, the first break of spring permanently, the chirping of birds, the sounds of mowers off in the distance, all of that coming in May, it's like this reawakening and this nostalgic feeling, as I always talk about, of here we go again. We're set for an awesome summer. What better month to get ready for that, and we're a week away from it. So who am I to come on here and begin on a note that is flippantly somber? We should be celebrating the fact that Fernando Mendoza was the number one pick in the NFL draft, the second time in the history of Indiana University athletics that they've seen the number one pick be called from Indiana, and the first time essentially on the lifetime of anybody that is aware of what's going on. Because, yes, there are people, I understand, living and walking around healthy and spry, one would hope, that were there in 1938, I believe it was the last time that happened, the only other time that happened. But I don't know how much they were paying attention to the 1938 NFL draft. So we should be celebrating that. We should be celebrating the fact that Omar Cooper, as JMV mentioned yesterday, maybe was even thinking about departing Indiana University, but gets hurt, sticks around, finishes out, plays his way into, largely, I think, because of his connection to seeing the play with Fernando Mendoza and the connection and the chemistry he had that helped Mendoza go on to win the Heisman Trophy. Omar Cooper Jr. from Lawrence North in Indiana going to the New York Jets. And you celebrate that for Indiana to have 2 first-round selections when they haven't had a first-round selection in over 30 years. Purdue, yes, not directly, but Purdue having a player selected by way of Oregon in the first round to the Hammond Bears, which is cool. And when it's a player from Westfield, which begs the question that I thought about last night, I was laying awake at 3:30 in the morning when the brain dropping hit me. The question came like the showers that might be falling upon Indianapolis here soon. The question hit me of, what is the last Indiana high school? I don't know this answer. I'm sure there is one. What is the last Indiana high school, or certainly Indianapolis metropolitan area high school, to have a first-round selection in the NFL and NBA draft in the same year? Because we may see that. If Braden Smith goes in the first round of the NBA draft, we're going to see a Westfield product, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
In the first round of each draft. Because we saw it last night in round number 1. And all of that came to me. And all of that was keeping me awake. And I'm glad that it kept me awake, and I'm glad that my brain was sitting there going over and over and over those things that were running through my head. Like, for example, I was curious why. I found it, and I know that there is a sacred cow here that I don't want to get on the wrong side with people thinking that I'm trying to nitpick something that has been a fabulous story with Indiana University. But I did find it peculiar that Indiana would have their spring game on the day of the NFL draft. Ryan Day was at the draft. Marcus Freeman was at the draft. I know Mendoza was not, but there were 2 players selected in the first round, and Indiana seemingly had no interest in watching that. And I know that they showed it at the game. I get it.
Dan Lanning was in the home of Kenyon Sadiq, who was not at the draft.
Bingo, right? when I say this, and I'm going to give all of you out there, this is not my flippantly somber news, by the way, but I'm going to give my phone number right now to anybody listening. I've done it a million times, but I'll do it 1,000,001. 317-523-9288. It's 523-9288. You can also text the show at 239-1070. And I would like for people, because I understand it, what Curt Cignetti just pulled off at Indiana is the most remarkable coaching job, arguably, in the history of sport. And part of the bravado of Curt Cignetti, part of the brash nature of him is what got them there. Google me, I win, all those things. And we love it. And I would be a fool to go on the flagship radio station of Indiana football and question a coach like that. From a football standpoint, X's and O's, all of those things, it would be lunacy of me to question that. However, I am curious of this fact. Are there Indiana fans, the biggest of IU football fans, are there Indiana fans, even the biggest, that in any way, shape, or form found it to be maybe finally once just kind of overstepping the we don't care what anybody thinks, we're going to do it our way nature of it, of having your spring game held on a day that should have been a celebration and the culmination of celebration for two of your players that have reached the ultimate level in representing Indiana? And if you have, you've got players from Oregon, as you mentioned, where the coach was there in the home. I know Mendoza was not there. Other coaches that are there at the draft. Should Curt Cignetti have, because to me, it is a bad look. I'm not saying it's a terrible, detrimental thing long term, but in the moment, I think it's a bad look to make it appear as though something like that celebration of the ultimate display of where your program now is, that they are producing the number one pick in the draft and 2 first-rounders in the draft, to make it look like you don't even have to. And I know that they showed it up on the video board at Memorial Stadium. I get that. But the perception becomes that we don't care about that. We're on to next season, and we got work to do, and we're starting it now. And I get it. I can somewhat appreciate that. I just think it looks a little bit snide, and I think it's a little bit odd. That's all. I just think it's odd. But I did figure out last night that over one-third, 11 of the 32 players selected in the first round last night, and 2 of them aren't even eligible for this category. So 11 of the 30 players that were eligible for the following statistic fall into this category, and I found this fascinating. Did you ever think you'd see the day where there would be 11 names called in the NFL draft in round number 1 that all lost their conference championship game or their final college game to Indiana? There were 11 players selected last night who lost in the college football playoff or their conference championship to the Indiana Fighting Hoosiers. That's remarkable. Remarkable. And again, a kudos to the job that Curt Cignetti and Indiana have done. So it just seems like it would have behooved them to be somewhat participatory within that event. Maybe I'm wrong. But here is my flippantly somber note. And it was not all of those things that had me up at 3 o'clock in the morning staring at the ceiling. It was the following realization. And it made me sad. It made me sad. Not a lot of things anymore in sport make me sad. This made me sad. I bleed the torch of Indiana. I love Indianapolis. I love it. As a matter of fact, when I had a procedure done on my heart, Mottman said to me after the fact, I couldn't believe it, but I actually looked at, and I don't know how this worked, but the main 2 arteries heading into your heart both had labels on them. One said Meridian, one said Washington. That's how much you're Indianapolis. I said, yeah, I know. Everything about me is a circle. including sometimes the way I talk, but because I'm from the Circle City. Indianapolis, home to me. I love everything about it. And because of that, as a kid growing up, my marquee signature favorite event on planet Earth was the Indianapolis 500-mile race. This is not a revelation of breaking news that I'm telling people. Everybody knows, I think, how I feel about the 500 and the honor that I hold it to be a part of it in a very small way. Because it is my opinion, it's the greatest event in the world, and it's a civic celebration of who we are as a people. And for my entire life, from the time I came out of the womb, and the very first Indianapolis 500 winner that took place with me on Earth, which would have been Gordon John Cox's first win, or the very first Indianapolis 500 that took place when I was in utero, which would have been Mark Donohue's win. From that time to now, anywhere that I've gone, I've been to Barcelona, I've been to Paris, I've been to Luxembourg, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Canada, I've even been to some parts of Arkansas. And every place that I go, the thing that I'm the most proud of for my entire life is that I am from the place that holds annually the largest single-day spectator sport in the world. I loved with all my heart when Jim Phillippe would say, and now we witness as free men and women the world's most spectacular spectator sport. We also pay homage. I loved it. And Eddie Garrison, I can't tell you what it meant and the pain that I felt last night to know that that's no longer true. Last night, the sorrow that I felt, the dismay, and I tip my cap. I tip my cap in humble defeat to know that now the Indianapolis 500, and it's 2.5 miles of grandstands, and it's 600 acres of infield land, or whatever it may be. It's not 600, but you get what I'm saying. To know that that is no longer the largest single spectator sport. Because Adam Schefter said, and if Adam Schefter said it, it's got to be true. Roger Goodell said there were 320,000 people there last night, and Adam Schefter retweeted it. And if Adam Schefter retweeted it, he's not at all being a shill for the NFL. He's not at all being Baghdad Bob. He's saying, that's right, 320,000. Biggest spectator sport in the history of the United States, the NFL draft in round number 1. And I guess I should at least take pride in the fact that a player from Indiana was the one that was seen by 1/3 people. That the entire population of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, within the city limits itself, was there, plus another 20,000, all packed into one parking lot to watch the NFL draft. Let's go. And you know what? I should be bitter about that, but I'm thrilled. I grew up a Steelers fan. I like the Steelers because we didn't have a team in Indianapolis. All we had was the largest single-day spectator sport in the world. And so I was a Steelers fan because my dad worked in the steel business. So at least I can say that congratulations, Pittsburgh. Enjoy your title. Don't screw it up. Until next year when there are 650,000 at wherever the draft is going to be held. But I regret. I'm done. That's it. I'm done with the crowd numbers and laughing at the absurdity of it, and quite frankly, being journalistically disappointed in Adam Schefter for sending that out and verifying what the NFL said, or rather sending it out without verifying it himself, because that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. But now, tonight, the Colts will make their first selection in this year's draft, and there are a number of positions. I think when I looked over this, and you look at linebacker, Hill from Texas and Allen from Georgia. There's a kid from Cincinnati that's thought to be a really good linebacker. Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech, who had an unbelievable defense this year. All available at linebacker. And one of those could be available when the Colts get up there at the podium. There are a lot of edge rushers available still. That wasn't a position seemingly that there was a huge run. I'd have to look at the exact numbers. In the first round, there were, 5 edge rushers taken? Something like that? I'd have to look at the exact numbers. But either way, I think it comes down to, and Eddie Garrison, you tell me your thoughts on this, for the Colts themselves, seems to me like if you were to make a list of the players of need, and we've talked a lot about it, linebacker, edge rusher is one that they are so keen on getting that right that it feels like if there's somebody that falls to them that they think is the guy, that's where they go. But nonetheless, linebacker, edge, don't laugh, but wide receiver, I think the Colts are in a position, Eddie, you tell me what you think, where they may, in fact, just go, we're going to go 4 positions here, linebacker, edge, corner, receiver, let's say. And whatever is the best of those 4 positions available, that's where we go.
Yeah, I would say linebacker would be number 1 on the priority list because, Jalen Carlisle and Akeem Davis-Gaither are the only 2 linebackers currently on the roster, and Carlisle hasn't been able to stay healthy. He was a guy that was kind of in the doghouse last year with Lou Anarumo in the first year. Now, how much of that was because he's not a Lou guy. Lou was not around when they drafted Jalen Carlisle. And so is it a fit question with him? And can he stay on the field? Akeem Davis-Gaither, okay. He was a solid role player in Cincinnati. Nothing too spectacular. So, linebacker is probably need number 1. And when you look at it right now, you highlighted some of the names that could be there at 47. The bigger question I have, Jake, is will they be picking at 47? Will he move back to 50, 51, 52 and get another pick in a draft where the Colts don't have a lot of picks and we know how Ballard is?
Yeah, I think, the dropping back or dropping back is the wrong way of saying it. The falling back is a possibility, right? I mean, look at Alec Pierce, to be honest with you. How did they get Alec Pierce? Remember, that was the year that they kept trading back. And then eventually Alec Pierce was there, and I would say that worked out well, right?
Yeah, that was that the year they traded out of the first round? They got Rock Yassin with him? No, that was later.
Rock Yassin was well before, right?
Yeah, Pierce was later, is what I was saying.
Hey, Jake. I felt that having the spring game during the same time as the draft was more of a celebration for the fans and players in the stadium. Your thoughts on that, Eddie?
I think I would have to look at the history of this, Jake. Don't they typically play the spring game on the Thursday before Little 5? And it just so happened this year that the draft fell on that Thursday.
Yeah, yes. And here's the thing, and I this is going to sound like such a swipe. Indiana typically doesn't have to think about the NFL draft, right?
Yeah.
But wouldn't you? Couldn't you move that? This from your only friend Alec. Jake, I'm not an IU fan, but having your spring game during the week and not a weekend is weird by itself. I don't disagree with that, right? Jake, no one person is bigger than the program. That's right. Hell yeah. No one, we don't, Fernando Mendoza, the number 1 pick, we don't care. We're bigger than that.
It was Paris Campbell. That's the wide receiver I was thinking in that draft with Rock Yassin.
No one person's bigger than the program. Don't worry about the fact that Ryan Day was there to shake hands. Here's the thing when it comes to that. This is where old man Jake's got to wake up to the times. I look at it and I think to myself, I think about John Calipari when he was at Kentucky. And those years that Kentucky had a gabillion players being drafted every year in the first round of the NBA draft. And Calipari was right there front and center. First guy that was given the handshake and the hug. You know why? Not just because he was happy for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Not just because he was happy for Anthony Davis. Not just because he was happy for Karl Anthony Towns. Not just because he was happy for Trey Lyles. Not just because he was happy for Devin Booker. The reason that he was there was so that the next big thing watching on television would see it. That's the guy that can get me to the league. And I see Ryan Day and I see Marcus Freeman and I see coaches that are there, and my brain tells me the coaches should be involved in it so that the next big thing sees that and says, that's my key to the league. That's the coach that gets me there. And then I have to remind myself, Jake, get out of it. Get out of it. You're living in a fantasy world. You're living in the world where you think that matters. It's not about for players these days when they look at where they're going to go. There are 3 letters, and it ain't NFL. It's NIL. It ain't about who's getting me to the NFL. It's about who's getting me the NIL right now. And I'm not saying that Indiana's guilty of that. There were too many people last year, I think, that thought that Indiana just went to Costco and bought themselves a national championship roster. They didn't do that. They brought 17 players from JMU. And they did use the portal a la Mendoza to complement in areas, but they did not have the payroll of an Alabama. But that's not to say they're not about to. That's not to say they're not about to. Eddie, did you do anything fun last night?
No, nothing fun. Had to work last night.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch the draft? Did you record the draft? Did you watch Landman? Are you all caught up?
I have watched the first season of Landman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm through season 1.
Are there any seasons that you found yourself rewinding and slow-moing a scene? Or any scenes, I mean, that you found yourself rewinding and slow-moing?
Not yet.
Okay. Not yet. What do you think after one season?
That's good. Really good show.
Any predictions on what's going to happen in season 2?
None yet.
I made a very bold prediction after season 1 of Landman with a number of listeners here. We were texting back and forth about it, and my prediction came true. I mean, it wasn't like an outside the box. I was kind of surprised how well it came, right? Do you find in any way, shape, or form the Roger Goodell bear hugs uncomfortable? Not in like a guy hug guy kind of way, but just in a like, how well do you really know this guy and acting like it's your own kid and swaying? What's the number of sways back and forth that two guys can do that have never previously met one another, especially when one of them is about to become the principal in your principal's office for the next 10 years? What's the number of sways back and forth you can do before it looks completely fake?
2.
So you're allowed, when you say 2, do you consider that to be sway left, sway right, that's 1, or sway left 1, sway right 2, done?
Sway
How many
left
weebles
1,
are we allowed here in the bro hug?
Sway left 1, sway right 2.
Okay, that's as the most that you're allowing,
Yeah.
right? What about do we allow, and again, I just mean in a like this is uncomfortable and looks fake standpoint.
Because after that, you're just practicing for your first dance as a married couple.
Yes. And how many, let me ask you this, how many pats and then rub on the back are you allowed before it looks like, okay, guys, you're doing this for the cameras and this is not genuine?
2 pats on the back.
Okay. And then
But
who
they got to
should
be quick. That'd be like pat, like that.
who let me ask you this, who should do in this situation when two people are meeting? Okay? Who should do the arm pull in? Should the arm pull in who transitions it properly in this etiquette? Who transitions it from handshake to hug? Would that be the person who is the
shaker, not the shakee?
Okay, the shaker is Goodell in this case, right?
Yes.
The shakee is the recipient of the handshake is the new player.
Yes.
But the new player knows that this is the guy that actually is the judge and jury for everything that happens with their professional career over the next 10 years, for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to defer a little bit. So Goodell is setting the tone here. So he's the one that should do the pull in?
Yes.
Okay. And then he's allowed two
sway left and sway right.
And then
done.
And just 2 little pats, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think it was longer than that on average. Matter of fact, if the same people that do the attendance numbers would tell you, they would tell you it was actually 187 sways per hug. Right? That's what they would say. Okay, so what are the Colts going to do? I'd like to know this. 239-1070 is the telephone number. We got a show lined up today talking about this and more. Our friend from Bloomington is going to join us in an hour, correct? 45 minutes from now? Mike Niselik's going to join us about 40 minutes from now, actually. We'll take a look at spring football and like I said, I'm not saying I'm right on this. I don't know. I don't know. I just found it odd that you would do your spring game in the middle at the exact same time as the NFL draft. So let me know if I'm wrong in that, but I would be curious to know what position you feel is the biggest need for the Colts. Because it is peculiar to me that this is not a year, and that's not a bad thing. Last year we knew tight end, tight end, tight end. You knew tight end. Beaver Cleaver could have been the only tight end on the board, and the Colts would have taken him. But tight end, tight end, tight end, we knew a year ago. This year, which is it? Does Ballard go edge because that's what he's in love with and keeps going back to that drawing board? Does Ballard go linebacker because that's the area that perhaps they need the most depth? Does Ballard go corner because they have an elite one in Sauce Gardner and they've got some good ones, but Kenny Moore obviously is on his way out. They love Justin Wally, but he is still a rookie. And then Mooney Ward, there's question marks about his longevity. So a lot to unpack, and we'll do it over the course of the next couple of hours. It's a feel-good Franciscan Health, feel-good, good for the heart Friday as well. We will get to it. Kevin Bowen going to join us. Your calls as well at 239-1070. It is Query & Company on the Fan.
Barry and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, so in talking about, on the text line here, a couple of things. Jake, the timing of the Little 500 plays into this. 75 years of Little 5. I get that. Again, I mean, but Little 5 forever is the marquee signature event at Indiana University, and always will be probably. But the spring football game, in particular this year, this is the first year that people are going to have a lot of attention and focus on it. You know what I mean? And so that's the one thing where I'm like, really? I guess it's a big recruiting weekend. Okay. I do have to address this from, and I'm not sure who it was that sent it, that said, you need to get over it. Your takes are way over the top. Okay, that's cool. Same person, by the way, on March the 6th said, Jake, you're out of your mind. There is no general manager out there that would give Daniel Jones $40 million a year. What are you talking about? What did he sign for, Eddie? Daniel Jones? 2-year, $88 million? Okay. Just double checking there, right? Rugby Sevens National Championship, Jake. IU, the first game today, they beat Harvard 29-0. Let's go. Let's go, right? So the biggest position of need, I think it's probably linebacker, right? Probably linebacker, but wide receiver is kind of sneaky. Wide receiver is kind of sneaky in terms of the position that they could use some help, because you lose Michael Pittman Jr. and you have not replaced that yet, and that is an important spot. I just feel like they're in the position where there are any of like 4 different positions they could go to. Hey, Jake, you're sounding like old man get off my lawn today. I think you had a guest on your show yesterday that said IU didn't have a lot of options. Yes, I would have liked for the coach to have been visible, but I don't know how or if he communicated with those drafted yesterday. And I can't imagine the pressure of having to follow the greatest season in college football history. I get it. I did hear Kevin mention this morning, or Eddie, maybe you were telling me that Kevin mentioned this morning that he also, I don't know if Kevin had heard this or if he was pontificating about the possibility that and I had forgotten about this. I mean, keep in mind that Fernando Mendoza's younger brother, they basically went out and found Josh Hoover, and perhaps in the eyes of the Mendoza family didn't give him the proper opportunity to win that job. So we'll see. Lastly, Jake, I would not call the NFL draft a sporting event unless the way the Indy 500 is. So in my opinion, the NFL draft doesn't knock the 500 down to second place. I think you lost the cynicism there. It doesn't knock the 500 down to second place because there weren't 100,000 people there, let alone 320,000. It's embarrassing. The NFL does an unbelievable job. It's incredible. I was with Dave First last night. We were watching it. We're like, look at this crowd. It's awesome. Dave covered probably 10 NFL drafts. And, we were talking about just the good old days at Channel 6 together last night as we were watching the draft, and the crowd itself was incredible. There's no doubt about the fact it's massively impressive. So why lie about it? You get 80,000, 75,000. I would have said more like 60 last night, but let's say 80 to 100. You get that many people to show up for that. That's incredible. Why embarrass yourself if you're Adam Schefter by saying there's 1/3 people there? It's ridiculous. Rick joins the show. Hi, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jake.
Do I sound like an old man yelling at clouds today, Rick?
I don't think so. I'm an old man. I'm an old man, and I'm going to yell at the cloud myself anyway.
Okay.
I get rid of this bro hug thing with the commissioner. This is a business transaction. Give a nice, good, firm handshake. Thank you very much. Welcome to the NFL. To me, it just makes it's disingenuous. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. It looks a little little scripted, right?
Scripted, shoot. It's all for the cameras, and hug your family, hug your friends, but not the commissioner of the league. Just stop it. It's too much. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Rick. Rick's my guy.
That's a good phone call right there.
Rick's my guy.
Short to the point, understands it's your show and doesn't want to hang on the line. I'll talk to you later.
It's everyone's show, Eddie. Don't we know this? It's everyone's show, right? Matthew, what's up?
Hey, Jake, not much.
Your thoughts on last night? Were there 320,000 people there?
Well, I was at work, but, I imagine so, because if that's what they reported.
No, wait a minute. So if they say there's 320, then you're like, okay, that's cool. No. All right, let's get to the important thing, and that is the Colts themselves, Matthew. I know you're a Colts fan. It's how you ended up in Indianapolis. In your opinion, the position of need would be what?
All right, well, I had to reach out to my good friend Teresa for this because she's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, so she's pretty much an expert, and she would like to see an edge rusher taken.
Edge rusher. All right. Well, Matthew, I'll tell you what. Here are the edge rushers. Eddie, I've done my homework on this, on the edge rushers, okay?
That's a first.
You know what it is? I'm an edgepert, just so you know, on this, right? I'm not in the Hall of Fans, but I'm an edgepert. Here we go. Zion Young of Missouri. Do we happen to have the ESPN sounder, Eddie? With the 47th pick, and we don't know, they may trade back, whatever it might be, right? The Indianapolis Colts select Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. Is it Oklahoma University or University of Oklahoma? I believe it's OU, but it's actually University of Oklahoma. Thus, people get confused. And if I see another recruit that says, honored to get an offer from the University of Indiana, I'm like, it's Indiana University. It's Indiana University. It's called IU. But Oklahoma throws us off a little bit because I believe it's the University of Oklahoma, but it goes by OU. Robert, what's going on?
Hey, man, I just wanted to get your feelings on this.
Robert, people ever call you Bob, just out of curiosity?
Bob's my dad.
Okay, that's cool. So, and now what about Robbie? Did you ever go by Robbie? Or are you just straight up Robert?
Yeah, Robert.
Okay. Like if you're with a group of buddies, like guys that you grew up with, your guys, your boys, what do they call you?
Rob.
So which one? And I'm curious, and feel free, be honest. You're giving me permission to call you which?
You can, I feel like we're friends. You can go with Rob.
That's what I like to hear, Rob. Have you called the show before, Rob?
Oh, all the time. I'm the resident Wizards and Redskins fan, so I'm always mad because you always talk about how bad the Wizards are. We're always your example.
That's the Commanders now, Rob. Come on, 21st century. Now you got to admit though. Now the Wizards might end up with AJ DeBonsa, and they actually have the Wizards. Rob, I'll give you this much: the Wizards sneaky have kind of a waiting and bubble wrap roster that didn't play together at the end of the year because of injury. But the trades they made, if Anthony Davis sticks around there, they could do something. I do believe that.
I think we could be a good team, but with our draft luck, we'll probably drop to 5, get Keaton Wagler, and have no clue what to do.
All right, fair enough. All right, Rob, now go ahead back to the draft talk. My apologies.
So I wanted to get your take on this. What makes me more mad than anything with the draft is you'll get the talking heads 30 seconds later that are giving complete lists of draft grades. These guys haven't even been in the practice facility with the rest of the team yet. Why are they giving out draft grades when I just don't get it. It probably makes me more mad than anything ever.
I think one of the most fun things, and I know that when it comes to the draft, it's probably not in the – let me ask you this, Rob, one other thing before I let you go, okay?
Yeah.
Because if you're a Wizards and a Commanders fan, you're familiar with sports cynicism. That goes without saying. You're a glutton for punishment from time to time. No offense. I'm kind of naturally a cynic about the immediacy of the draft. Is that not in my best interest as a radio host? Do I need to be completely dialed in with like the grades and all of that? Or is it okay if I have a little bit of skepticism about things?
You should always have skepticism because the people giving the grades have never played football half the time.
That's probably true too, right? Now, I mean, Mel Kiper knows what he's talking about. Those guys, they do know. But yes, in terms of how the thing that, Rob, and I appreciate the call, the thing that I always go back to is you never know. I think that I was and I'll offer this. I was like a lot of people for a long time, and notably I'm going with NBA versus NFL draft. I was always very cynical and skeptical of any pick, for example, that the Pacers would make. And that's a little bit easier to judge because you only have 12 to 15 players. So it's much easier to see where a guy can slot in versus a roster that has, 50 plus players on it with practice squad and everything else. And 22 starters. And the way that players have to rely off of one another. I thought Matt Taylor yesterday made an excellent point. Matt Taylor made an excellent point about draft grades. And it's why I should probably pump the brakes on my cynicism, because I should learn from conversations I've had in the past. And we can talk about players, and we can talk about voids, and we can talk about best available and all of those things. But perhaps what I've spoken in the past, I should listen to my own voice, as much as I hate doing so, about what it means for the future and what Matt Taylor had to say. And I'll explain what I mean on the other side. Hey there, Jake Query for Game Day Men's Health. GameDayMen'sHealth.com, the website. Locations in Avon, Fishers, Carmel, Greenwood. What exactly is Game Day Men's Health? Well, I will tell you. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was talking to somebody in the medical field, and we were talking about peptides and peptide therapies, and said, yeah, there's a lot of new research about the benefits of peptide therapy, not just in helping out with that stubborn belly fat that, guys, I know you're dealing with if you're over the age of 40, certainly, or if you just get that midday slumber where you feel like you need that nap. That could be a testosterone issue, and testosterone therapy also available for Game Day Men's Health. Game Day Men's Health is there to help you come up with a game plan to get you back in the game. Get back to feeling yourself, whether it be energy, whether it be a slower, or if you're having too long a recovery in terms of after a workout, the soreness, and just making sure that recovery time is indeed shorter. That's what the peptide therapies can do for you. I love everything about Game Day Men's Health, because when I went in there, they sat down, they showed me essentially the menu of all of the therapies that they have. Talked to my doctor about it as well. They encourage that. And, of course, they have FDA-approved pharmacies. It is quick, it is efficient, it is friendly, and it works, making you feel better and getting you with a custom-made game plan to get you back in the game. Find out all of the things that they have available and find out which therapy is best for you by making a consultation appointment at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Matt Taylor was on with us this week, and I thought he said something that was very insightful. And you take it to heart because this is a guy in Matt Taylor that sees every play, literally sees every play. And one thing I know in doing play-by-play and that I've learned, and allow me to offer two different areas as it comes to the way that we can ingest the NFL draft, decipher and break down the NFL draft. Two areas. The first, and they both go to two different conversations I've had. You know, Matt was mentioning that Liatu Latu, for example, that you can look at his effectiveness as an edge rusher and say, well, he has fallen short of expectation because he hasn't had the sack numbers to this point that were expected when he was the first defensive player picked in the draft. And then Matt was saying, but what you don't see in that and what you don't know is how his role may not be, yes, of course, the ultimate goal is to get a sack, but perhaps his role at times, not on every play, but there may be plays where the defensive scheme that they're coming up with, his job is simply to turn a player a certain way or move and shift the offensive game plan to the other side because that's where they're lining up or doubling a box or whatever it may be. And there could be things that go into the effectiveness of that player just based on their presence that statistically we don't recognize or know or then have permanent record of how they impacted a play with what their job on that play was to do. And I go back to a couple of years ago when Rubens Barrichello, the former Formula One driver, drove for Ferrari, and it was announced that he was going to be running in the Indianapolis 500. And he had yet to do so, but it was in like the late spring when the announcement was confirmed that he was going to be in the Indy 500. And I happened to be sitting at one of the hospitality tents at one of the IndyCar races in the spring, probably St. Pete. And I was sitting with, and if I recall correctly, and I'm thinking in my head here, or I was more observing. I was a fly on the wall. I don't want to pretend like it means that they were like, hey, Jake, you're one of the guys. Come sit down. I'm not saying that. But it was myself, Tony Kanaan, Scott Dixon, and Graham Rahal. I specifically remember those three. And Franchitti may have been there as well. But they were talking amongst themselves, and I just happened to be a fly on the wall. But they were talking about Barrichello running in the Indy 500, and they said, you know, it's all fun and games until the last stint, the last 25 laps, then the knives come out. And I remember Kanaan saying, before that, we're just like, here, you want to lead? Go ahead. And everybody's polite, and everybody's giving you room and everything else until the last stint. And that's when the knives come out, and that's when he's going to realize what the Indy 500 is all about. And I realized that as a play-by-play announcer and somebody that watches every single lap, I had noticed that, but not truly noticed it. Like I could see it in my eye that people were more aggressive in the last stints, but it wasn't until those guys had told me that I then was able to truly see it, and my eye felt more trained. And for Matt Taylor to point that out about Liatu Latu, that means that Matt Taylor's eye is now more trained in not just calling the action of an NFL game, but understanding the action. And so for Matt to point that out about Liatu Latu, I reverted back to my conversation with those guys about racing, and then I could relate to how that is an educated observation. And then I thought about a conversation that I had years ago with an NBA executive talking about building a roster that said, I couldn't pay attention to and I couldn't get caught up in and I couldn't be worried about the critique of a pick I made because the people critiquing it were not aware of the fact that that particular pick may not have been significant until I got another one to match with it. And then you had two pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that perfectly aligned and everything came together. You can draft a power forward, and people are like, what are you doing? You need more baseline scoring, and you drafted a power forward. When in reality, that power forward is an elite level screener that opens up because you already have a baseline scorer on your roster, but he's not able to get to the baseline because he's getting caught up in double teams. So you draft a power forward to set the screen that frees that player open. Now, all of a sudden, boom, you've got baseline scoring within your roster already there, and you've taken care of another need. But you don't realize that player is of significance until you are then illuminated to the fact that they actually are working cohesively and symbiotically with another player that gets you to the ultimate goal of how you want to look. And I think the same can be true for the NFL draft. I can sit here and cynically say, I don't understand why they took this guy, or I don't understand why New York took this player, or I don't understand why Arizona took that player. You can say that all you like, but in reality, you may not know that one player may be making contribution or may be brought in to do something that is facilitating for somebody else. And I know that a little bit because of that conversation with an executive, and then I also respect and appreciate it when someone like Matt Taylor is able to see that those things work in terms of one thing feeding another in the ultimate Rube Goldberg machine of a defense or an offense, because Matt will have had to have had that trained eye that was pointed out to him in calling every single play for the radio, just like I had to in seeing it once it was pointed out to me and the way things work with the Indy 500. Now, as for one of the biggest talking points, was there a move of surprise last night that could have implication some 1,600 miles away here in Indianapolis? I'll explain what I mean, and Mike Nizilik joins us as well.
Squarey and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
1 o'clock hour underway. How are you? Sun's starting to come out. See, that's the thing. I'm sunshiny today on NFL Draft Day. Everybody thought I was too down on the fact that, again, I wasn't saying it was a bad thing Indiana's spring game was during that. It seemed kind of odd to me. Bad timing. Unfortunate timing. Maybe their spring game every year is the Thursday before Little Five, and for every year until now, no one noticed. It's probably more so that. Mendoza, number 1 overall. Omar Cooper goes in the first round to the New York Football Jets. And the Bears selecting a guy with Indiana ties that people may not have realized. I think most people knew he had Indiana ties, right?
Dylan Thieneman from Westfield High School.
I've been thinking about this a lot. I mentioned it earlier. I'm open to submissions. Now, that sounds like an HBO movie. I'm open to suggestions or for people to submit to me. In terms of two different players, although it wouldn't have happened with the same player either, but if Braden Smith is selected in the first round of the NBA draft, big if, but if he is, and there's probably an obvious that's jumping out that I am totally missing on here. But if Braden Smith goes in the NBA draft coming up in a couple of months in the first round, have there been other high schools from the Indianapolis metropolitan area to see a football player and a basketball player both selected in the first round of the draft? Because Westfield High School would have that claim. I guess it's possible when Greg Graham was drafted in the first round that Jamie Asher from Warren may have gone around the same time. He would have been a first rounder. I mean, that comes to mind for certain. I don't think Lawrence North had any football players during the Odin Conley era or Montross era. Damon Watts was not a first-round pick, so that wouldn't apply. George McGinnis in basketball, but I don't think there were any football players from Indianapolis, Washington at that time. McGinnis would have been one of them to be selected. But that's the kind of food for thought that keeps me awake at night. But before we get back to the phone lines and Mike Neislick joins us, perhaps the biggest surprise of the draft. Now, Eddie, you called this right down Broadway. You said yesterday that you felt the best player in the draft was who?
Jeremiah Love.
Correct. And clearly the Arizona Cardinals agreed with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because they took him third.
They did.
By taking him third and not knowing, as of right now, and I'm actually embarrassed to ask this, what is their quarterback situation?
It is Jacoby Brissett, but Jacoby is wanting a restructured deal because he feels like he should be paid as if he's the starter because they've traded or got rid of Kyler Murray, and now it's assuming that he will take over the starting role, even though he was 1-11 as a starter last year for Arizona. The backup, Gardner Minshew. It is the Arizona Colts quarterback room out there.
Could it be that by drafting Jeremiah Love, the Cardinals just said, you know what, we now have a young running back. We didn't go with a non-skill set position. We went skill set running back, and that means that we need a young quarterback to grow this guy with. We already have 2 former Colts in the stable. Could there be a third?
I think so because of the fact that Ty Simpson went 13th last night to the Rams, and I think it's hysterical, all the videos of Sean McVay that are coming out. Last night when they met with the media in L.A. about the pick, and then the draft call, just chef's kiss. Because you can clearly tell that Sean McVay did not approve of the pick. And so now Ty Simpson was the guy that was probably going to go in the second round to Arizona. At least that was the thought. But he's off the board, and now there's not really a quarterback in the second wave here in the day 2 and day 3 that are like, okay, yeah, that guy can be a guy. Like, can Garrett Nussmeier be a guy? He was very, thought of going into last season at LSU, and then he had a very down year, and it turned out because he had multitude of injuries he was dealing with, and there was something that came up in the medical evaluation process in Indy with him, and I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was a result of all the oblique injuries that he was dealing with a season ago. So Arizona could be a team to watch for Anthony Richardson.
Correct. That's the one team. That's the one team that I could see the Colts doing business with and saying, you know what, send us a 7th rounder. Maybe even next year's 7th rounder, but send us something. And Richardson does feel like that's the one place that could have some room or somewhere where they could end up going quarterback. Mo from Ohio, 239-1070, the telephone number. Hi, Mo. How are you?
Good, Jake. Good. How everything going pretty well here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the board and what the Colts are going to do. Maybe I have no idea. I look at the mock drafts and everything, and different groups have people ranked different ways. And I heard something the other day about if the edge rusher is a projected, the 9th best versus a 3rd best linebacker, do they take a linebacker? And my thought about that whole thing is it's all based on whatever Ballard has his board in the war room ranked at, and we have no idea what that is. And so we're kind of at the mercy of whatever he thinks is the most important. It's not what ESPN or CBS or any of that. I think they got to take a linebacker, but who knows? There's 3 of them, I think. I think you need a linebacker, an edge, and a wide receiver. But I don't know. Last night as I was watching it, it was kind of tough to sit there and watch other teams get prospects. And I know I talked to my son, and you said not all of those guys are going to hit, but just on draft day, it always makes you feel really good if you got a really good player, and Colts obviously aren't in that position.
See, Mo, I go back to this. I don't know if you heard me mention this yesterday, okay? But follow me here with the math. I mean, you're a mathematician, right, Mo?
Oh, yeah, history mathematician.
That's right. Well, as you know, I mean, your town, if I'm not mistaken, is the same town that produces Dum Dum lollipops, right? Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Accurately describes my math skills here, okay? But I'm going to try my best. So I said yesterday, it's almost like you come up with a grid, and you say each position we're going to rank it in terms of our need 1 to 5, 5 being of greatest need, right? And then you make a list of the players that are available at that position. You give them a score. You give every player in the draft a score 1 to 20. And if you look at it and you say, okay, the best player available right now where we're selecting, we have scored as a 17, okay? And the best player if the best player is a 17 and the best player at the position that is of most need to us is an 11, that's a difference of 6, and your need is 5 there. That's too great a gap. You go with the 17 guy. You go with the best player available in that situation. But if the best player, if there is a player at your biggest position of need that scores at within like 2 points of what the best player available is, then you take that. You surrender the 2 points of the best player available to fill a specific need. I think you've got to have balance on a pick, whether you're going best player or specific need, and you vary it from pick to pick. Does that at all make sense what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it does. It does. The other thing, though, that nobody really talks a lot about, that I think Ballard really counts on is RAS scores, the relative athletic scores that a lot of those guys get. And I don't know what those are. I mean, you don't never see them in the mock drafts, and I think he depends on that a lot when he goes to pick players. And I don't know what that has to do with what you're just talking about, but it probably affects it in some way.
I think you look at, Mo, and I appreciate the call. Bill Pullen used to always say that if you could hit on 60%, I think it was 60% he used to say, if you hit on 60% in the draft, you're doing really well. And that's probably, and we can, and we do kind of at times, I hate to say it, we do mock Ballard at times about some of his drafting prowess or lack thereof, or the fact that he goes back to the well for the same position on a number of occasions. I get that, the fact that it's almost like an easy thing to nitpick, but again, to give benefit of the doubt here, and again, the sun's out now. I'm sunshiny. I was dark cloud pessimist, top of the show. Not anymore. The sun's now out now. It's late April. It's beautiful. We got a lot to talk about. It's a fun day. Bowen's going to join us. Nisley's going to join us. People told me I'm wrong about the IU thing. That's cool because it's sunny outside.
Does it concern you that there were not many April showers to bring the May flowers?
You know what? If April showers bring May flowers, do you know what May flowers bring?
What?
The Colts. Come on, Eddie. Come on. You don't want to. Come on. Come on. Thank you. It's pretty solid, right? You're staring at the floor. You're staring at the floor and you're rubbing your temples. Now, do you ever, right then, or I'd like to know, are you saying to yourself, is it 3:00 yet? Or are you saying to yourself, where does that all come from? Which one is it?
My allergies are really acting up today.
Okay.
My eyes are all scratchy and itchy and puffy today.
Itchy and Scratchy, that was a cartoon show, right? Wasn't that right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's right. But no, I'm not worried about it's going to be a green, beautiful spring. I'm fired up for it. I'm in a good mood. I do think it's odd, and I let it off the show by saying, and again, I wasn't saying it's an indictment. I wasn't saying that it's a negative per se. But I found it, and I get it. It's spring game always falls the Thursday before Little Five, and that's a huge recruiting weekend, okay? Are we pretending now that that's what gets players, or is it the check? I say that not as to call out Indiana. That's just the world we live in now. You can have all you want, and so maybe for that reason, I shouldn't be worried about the fact that, like, I look at Ryan Day there, I'm like, he's at the draft for a reason. He wants players to see, I can get you to the NFL. But like I said, players now probably way more focused NFL than NIL than NFL. It's a reality. Mike Nisley from the now, Mike, I want to make sure I get this right. Bloomington Herald-Times, correct?
Correct.
The telephone thing still throws me off. That's how old I am.
Yes. No, we got rid of the telephone, I think, quite a bit ago.
Yeah, around the same time that most people got rid of the rotary phone, right? I mean, it's been a while.
Yes, it's been a minute.
It's been a long time. As in Times, Bloomington Herald-Times. Mike Nisley joining us, the IU beat writer. All right, let's begin with this to put it to bed because I obsess over things far too often. Do you think, was there any mention or discussion of the fact of just the unfortunate maybe coincidence that Indiana's spring game came at the same time that a lot of the fans probably would have been like to have watched the draft, even though I know they showed it at Memorial Stadium?
In terms of fans might have been upset about that, or because it's all tied to the what's going on campus, right? Like it's a recruiting they use it as a recruiting event, and so like when you bring kids on campus on Little Five weekend, it is it shows Bloomington and Indiana University sort of in its best light, that this is an exciting place, that we've got all this these things on campus, and so it's timed to that, and so it was just an unfortunate coincidence when these things are sort of that's where they've sort of tied it to the last couple of years, that this is what they want to do, that just so happens to fall on that date. And then obviously you have a generational player, no one predicted that necessarily. You can't kind of call your shot there. And so it happens like that. But I thought they did a nice job of sort of honoring the past and the present sort of on that night. Fans, I think caught it on their phones, and sort of there was like a little buzz as Mendoza goes, first, and then they show it on the jumbotron. They show an image, and they show a couple of clips kind of throughout the night. And so I think fans got the best of both worlds that they were going to the game. And since there was no drama, like I think it would have been different if Mendoza was like, is he going to go first? Is he not? Like, I mean, this had been done for months. So,
right.
I mean, it's like, it wasn't sort of like this exciting moment necessarily in terms of like, oh my gosh, they got the number one pick. It's like fans knew going into that night.
Would it from and again, I'm not asking this in some sort of a like throwing a tantrum way. I'm genuinely curious. Did Curt Cignetti in any way, comment on, or was he asked about if it would have been a good gesture for him to have been with Mendoza in his home when he was selected first?
No, and I don't think I don't know because I don't know how many first picks have done. I think it was one in the last 10 years. Maybe Trevor Lawrence was the last pick, I think, at home that didn't go to the draft, and I don't remember. I don't think Dabo Sweeney was anything there. I think that's sort of like once you're going to be at home, you're sort of celebrating it with your family, that the coaches wouldn't be expected to be there. So I don't think that ever would be sort of an ask by the family, and I don't think that's like you're already moving on, especially in the spring. Like I know, coaches show up to kind of the draft and promote their program, but like, look, I mean, they have the number one pick and they're the national champions. I think that Cignetti can just stand on principle, like we have everything. We have all the awards. I mean, like they spent a couple of minutes, kind of recognizing some of the awards they won after the season and sort of in between the quarters. It's like they won everything. So it's like, I don't know. They don't need to do that. Like, I mean, they've got, I think they're happy with their station right now in terms of like what they accomplished last year. And I don't think that, there was nothing that detracted from his first pick, and Mendoza kind of going home, I think, made it easier, too, that the program didn't really need to have a presence at the draft because, Mendoza wanted to be with his family.
How did, in terms of spring practice, I saw, Curt Cignetti afterwards said, look, we're not a very good football team right now, and which I like. I mean, that's great coach speak, but I get what he's saying also because they still are working through so many new faces, and there's obviously a lot to replace. What jumped out at you last night?
Yeah, I mean, they had, I think, probably like 8 or 9 players not dressed, but then held out, probably 10 other players that are expected to be contributors. They were dressed and kind of went through some of the warm-ups and some of the drills, but then didn't play. And so, like, I don't, it was not necessarily they were bad. It was more sort of like, he's like, basically like, look, this is incomplete. Like, and I sort of said, the way I read about the offense, like, this is an incomplete grade. Like, the offensive line was sort of a mishmash of like, a couple of the guys that expected to start, but maybe out of position even. Some of the younger guys, but not even the younger guy that had started with the first team offense, Baylor Wilkin in place of Carter Smith. He was at left to tackle. He didn't even play. So, I mean, like it was really sort of a mixture of things, and they kind of struggled. And so Hoover didn't have sort of the time that you'd expect. And so, like, it was really hard to grade. Like, his point was this team will look a lot different in the fall and week 1 because obviously you're going to see not only are you going to see development, you're going to see a lot of literal bodies be back that weren't at the spring game or weren't available to him that are going to be starters and key contributors on the two deep.
Okay, the quarterback spot, and maybe it's too early to know this, Mike, but I think Josh Hoover is, at least reputedly, he is a very good passing quarterback. But Mendoza was so good with his legs. Do they have that same style that they can use with Hoover, or do they have to tweak the way they do things offensively?
No, they tweak it, and that's been kind of Cignetti's like calling card and sort of what they've done. Going back, to their time at JMU, I think the previous 3 quarterbacks they had, they transfer quarterbacks. Everything looked different each time. That they found the strengths of the guy that they brought in, and made the offense work and run around them. And so, Curtis Rourke, they didn't have any of that stuff that Mendoza ran, like in terms of like the running out of the pocket, rolling out. Some of the RPOs where he had the sort of the run option, like they took those things out because he wasn't mobile. Obviously, later found out he was playing on a torn ACL, so we knew why. But like, and then the things changed when Mendoza get here, and he shows them in the spring very quickly that he's the guy that maybe doesn't have the greatest top end speed, but can get around, do those things. And so Hoover, I think, is the same way. They'll spend they spent 13 practices in the spring getting to see him up close. I mean, obviously, they have a ton of film on him, but seeing what they want to do, and that the offense will be constructed to, bolster those strengths. And so you might just not see the run options that Mendoza had, but I think you'll see different things that play into his game.
When you look at the crowd last night versus Mike Nizilik, my guest from the Bloomington Herald-Times, a couple of years ago, before obviously Indiana, and I'll admit it's still surreal to know that they are the creme de la creme college football program. Like I mentioned off the top of the show, 11 players selected last night in round number 1 lost their conference championship game or college football playoff game this season to Indiana. 11 players out of the 30 in the first round where that could have been applicable. So it's remarkable. When you look at the crowd of the spring game last night, how did it compare to, let's say, 2 years ago?
Well, it was a vast difference, and it was good. They closed off one half of the stadium, and there was sort of an area for recruits. The other half was fairly full, and it was like a steep increase from where it was in 23. And I think there's trades-off, right? Like I think, and I've always said, like if you have this on a Saturday afternoon where people can just like tailgate like in the morning and spend all day, like you'd get a much greater crowd. But again, tying it into this event has very sort of different, like they're looking for different things out of it. They don't necessarily prioritize the crowd over the recruiting or over sort of the putting it in the tapestry of like I said, the Little 500 weekend where you have everybody on campus and sort of view it that way. And so I think they sacrificed a little bit with the crowd to put it on a Thursday night to sort of lead off Little 5 weekend, but also sort of make it more attractive for recruits. And so I think they could juice the attendance numbers, but ultimately, like it's a spring game, right? It's a spring scrimmage that was only 2 quarters and had a running clock for part of the second quarter. So it's like it's a practice essentially. And so like I don't think attendance is the end all be all, but you do see an increased interest. Players noted it. Players saw the difference who are here in 23 and 24 as you kind of see the growing numbers. But also like it's not going to be Georgia or Alabama where you draw 60,000 or something like that. And it's not even built like that though. That's not the goal of the spring game for Kurt Cignetti. So I like it's never going to be there unless you sort of make it try to make it that kind of event. But that's not what they're trying to do. They want to emphasize recruiting. They don't want to make it a full game where it's like, 2 full it used to be where you have spring games where it's like they had like kind of a draft and pit 2 rosters against each other and it was more of a game. That brings a little more excitement than like, 2-ish quarters of really just a practice. And so, I just think it's different. I wouldn't judge them, if people sort of are, worried about the crowd numbers. They were improved, but again, it's never sort of about the crowd for this.
Eddie, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder, just out of curiosity, while we have Mike here? This just in, ESPN's Adam Schefter confirming Roger Goodell says last night 214,000 people at Indiana's spring game. How about that? To go along with the 320,000 that were at the NFL draft. All right, Mike, I was told by one of my inside sources that you are a fabulous speller. Now, I was the 1984 Allisonville Elementary School spelling bee runner-up. Are you a particular wordsmith when it comes to spelling things?
No, terrible. Your sources are terrible. If they told you I could spell anything.
Well, I'd like to. Okay, I'm going to give you a word here. I want you to try to spell it. Are you up for this task?
I mean, I will fail, but go ahead.
Okay, well, would you like the word that knocked me out of the 1984 Allisonville Elementary School spelling bee?
Sure. Let's hear it.
Carfare.
Carfare?
Carfare.
Carfare.
Yes.
It's not just how it sounds, I'd take it?
Well, it depends on how you... And Mike, where I aired...
C-A-R-F-A-R-E?
Where, say that again?
C-A-R-F-A-R-E?
See, where I aired, Mike, is I did not have the same nature of inquisitiveness as you did about the word when it was presented to me in 1984. I went C-A-R-F-A, and then I froze. And have you seen Breaking Away, Mike? You're in Bloomington. Have you seen Breaking Away?
Yes, I actually saw Dennis Quaid on campus the other week.
Did you really?
Ironically enough.
Well, that's kind of
cool.
He
was visiting his son is looking at IU.
Well, that's cool. Okay. Part of the big Little 5 recruiting weekend, I guess. So when in Breaking Away, of course, the dad works at a car lot, and they have like a car lot with all of the flags, around the car lot. And for whatever reason, that was stuck in my head in 1984, and I went F-A-I-R. I thought it was like a fair that had cars, yeah. And then Jody Shear had to spell the word car hop to win it. Now, this is still under protest. It's been 32 years now, still under protest, that car hop would win it. I was going to ask you if you could spell onomatopoeia.
No, absolutely not.
So what we're getting at here is
I'll stick with car fare.
So hold on. So you're a writer who can't spell. Is that right?
Yeah, no, but I mean, I can look up the words, like that's the dictionaries and things like that. It's like it helps.
Or editors and spell check.
Yeah.
The two most important letters
But
to
also,
know proper.
I have not used onomatopoeia in a story.
Well,
so.
listen, Mike, all I know is this. In 2026, the two most important letters to know when there's question about spelling are AI. And I hate saying that, and I'm not saying that I'm going to go there, but that's just the reality of it. All right, Mike, appreciate the time as always, man. We look forward to talking to you again.
Sounds good. Thanks, man. You have a good weekend.
You too. Mike Neislick joining us from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Eddie, are you a good speller?
Sometimes.
Really?
Sometimes.
What sort of hidden skill or talent do you have? I'm a very good whistler. You know that?
Really?
Yes. Very good whistler. A lot of people have said that to me. They tell me that all the time. They say, I enjoy you on the radio, but you're an excellent whistler. And I don't do it a lot. You try to keep the talents close to the vest, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about for you? Any particular skill?
Not really.
You have no skill?
Not really.
None?
None.
Are you crafty around the house?
After I watch a YouTube video or two, yeah.
So you learn how to do things from the YouTube, and then you know how to do it yourself?
Yeah.
How many would you get? Are you a good estimator of crowds?
I can be. Possibly, yeah.
What is your legitimate – now, I'm not asking you to poke the bear here. What is your legitimate, educated guess as to how many people were there last night?
100.
Okay.
1,000.
Okay. I got to thinking about this. Can you look up for me real quick the capacity of the Ruoff Music Center, better known as Deer Creek? Can you look up for me the capacity of Ruoff Music Center? Because when they showed the aerials, it looked to me to be roughly probably that lot where, or whatever that space was in Pittsburgh, I would say it was double Ruoff. Like if you were to do an aerial of Ruoff on a packed show, a Grateful Dead mid-90s show before everybody broke down the fence and had a riot and then they canceled the shows. If everybody's in there packed at Ruoff, if you double that, and I think that's aggressive, but if you double that, I think that's about what you saw last night. What is the capacity of Ruoff?
24,790.
Okay. So 49 grand. I don't think it was triple that. Now, there might have been people inside the fan zones and or the bars, restaurants. We'll throw in an extra 20 grand for that.
Ryan from Pendleton chimes in and said that he went to the Detroit draft and it spanned like 4 blocks with multiple entry points. There were tons of people. Turnstiles were used to keep count, and they start the count as soon as the doors open in the morning.
Okay, here's the thing. 4 blocks. Now, let's think about this. If you took every person at the Indianapolis 500, and said, okay, everyone right now, we're going to do a group photo. Everyone is required right now to go to Monument Circle. So every attendee of the Indianapolis 500-mile race goes to Monument Circle. Monument Circle spokes on Market Street going east-west, and then Illinois, Meridian, Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
And you have everybody standing around Monument Circle and then standing in the streets and on the sidewalks. How many blocks does it fill?
I have no idea.
Everybody from the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
I have no idea.
4 blocks would be that it goes from that you would get everybody on the circle out to, let's say, West Street to the JW, and then going north, you'd have everybody up to like Michigan Street. That's 4 blocks. If you took every person from the Indianapolis 500 and sent every one of them to Monument Circle, I think it would fill the. I again, like I said, I don't dispute that they had 75,000. To say 320,000 is an insult. I have no idea why they, other than the fact it means that some guy in Indianapolis is going to talk about it for 3 straight hours, right? Kevin Bowen joins us, by the way, 29 minutes. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Surfside, look for the can with the sunset stripes. You already know about, and I love, by the way, the half and half, which is half lemonade and tea with a splash of vodka in it. And of course, just 100 calories and no carbonation, so smooth, perfect for this time of year. And now, how about Super Light, which comes in 4 classic sports drink flavors: fruit punch, orange, lemon lime, and blue chill from the folks at Surfside. Just 90 calories, 0 sugar, and 0 bubbles. It is here to fuel the moment and fuel you for this warmer weather. Look for Super Light variety packs in individual flavors at stores and bars near you. And Surfside, of course, as I mentioned, iced tea and lemonade with a splash of vodka. Please be 21 and please consume responsibly.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, let me tell you the pickle I'm in. You like pickles, Eddie?
I do enjoy a good pickle.
Okay. Do you enjoy pickles? Which kind? Do you like like a dill pickle or the sweet pickle?
I don't really know the difference, if I'm being completely honest
One's
with you.
dill and the other's sweet. Well, you got the dill pickle is the cucumber-sized pickle. That's typically what's found on a cheeseburger or et cetera. And then you've got the sweet ones, which are I don't know. They look more like kind of like a jalapeno pepper size.
Okay,
but
not
it's a sweeter
those.
flavor.
Not those.
Do you know that drinking pickle juice helps reduce leg cramps?
Yeah, I've also heard the same thing about mustard, right?
Oh, it's absolutely true about mustard. I'm telling you right now.
But
Get
dill
yourself
pickles.
mini marathon coming up next week. My advice to everybody that's doing the mini marathon a week from tomorrow.
Gold Bond and mustard.
Gold Bond, very important. Also, the runner glide stuff.
What?
Well, it's good for there's a lot of rubbing that goes on during the running of 13.1 miles.
Sure,
But
sure.
begin hydrating this week, and you don't need to overdo it, okay? But here is the fail-proof query advice. On Thursday and Friday, you want to make sure that you consume 2 bottles of Pedialyte per day. And then on race day, go to, I don't know, a restaurant, grocery store, whatever.
You're talking about the day of the mini, right? And not the actual race itself, correct? As in the 500?
Correct. I'm talking about the mini marathon.
marathon.
So, it's important to hydrate for the 500 as well. You want to drink 2 Pedialytes on Thursday of this upcoming week, 2 Pedialytes on Friday of this coming week. Drink above average amount of water Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then, now, people always talk about the carb load. And listen, I ain't no doctor, right? I'm not even a trainer. I didn't even take a Sally Struthers class in this stuff. This is just based on my own non-scientific experience and experiment. Your pasta dinner, do that on Thursday night, not Friday. Your body didn't have enough time to process it by Saturday if you do it on Friday, my opinion. And then when you are going to the race itself, Friday night, go out and get yourself 2 packets or 3 packets of mustard, yellow mustard. Put them in your pocket while you're running. If you start to get a cramp, open those things up, suck that bad boy down, cramp gone. Flawless method, I'm telling you. But here's the pickle that I find myself in, Eddie. And I need you, Eddie Garrison.
Is it a juicy pickle?
The man of, well, it could be. The man of no specific or discernible talent, based on your own confession. I need you to put on the hat right now, the talent of Dr. Phil.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
It's not often that I invite you or ask you to scrutinize what goes on within this neurotic melon, but I'm going to
become a
this
shrink?
time. That's right. You're going to be a shrink.
Okay.
Don't shrink too much. I'll have PTSD from the last guy I did shows with. Okay. So here we go. No, not Kevin.
Jimmy?
Afternoon show. Not Jimmy either. So here we go. Yesterday, we were talking about the show Landman.
Yes.
Okay? When we were talking about the show Landman, I said to you, I was asking you who you find to be the best-looking females on the show Landman.
Correct.
You abstained from giving the answer because you said you were worried, or you were, out of respect to your significant other, you did not want to make any sort of declaration that you might have noticed that there are attractive females on the show Landman.
Correct, yes.
Okay. During this, and I said, what about the fiance, which is a character on the show that I don't believe you've met yet, so I apologize for tipping the hand there, okay? But I used the word fiance. I said, what about the fiance? And you were unaware of what I was talking about, and I said, I'm sorry, maybe that was foreshadowing. Meaning something happens in the show in terms of an engagement that you have not gotten there, and I didn't want to be spoiler alert. Very shortly after that, you asked me what I thought Shannon would think if she knew that I was asking you about attractive females on the program.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Oh, did someone tell?
In the no. In the
Was she actually listening
game
for
that
once?
we live in here of people with intermittent listening habits, and I get it. And then also, you never know, somebody might go under a bridge and they hear it. So I'm talking and I'm saying something, and then all of a sudden my voice drops out or my mic goes mute or they go under a bridge and all of a sudden, and then I'm back and I'm talking again, right? Or somebody's listening and they go into the other room and they come back and they, the coffee's done, and they go and they come back, or they're at work and they're sitting there and they're listening intently to the show, and Bill from accounting pops in and then they answer Bill. And so they're hearing every other word. So we're talking, and what the words that are coming out are attractive, characters, females, fiance, Shannon. Shannon last night sends me a text with heart emojis all over it saying, "It's my understanding that you referred to me on the program now and you're referencing me on the show as foreshadowing attractive fiance." What she heard and what her friends heard was attractive, foreshadowing fiance. Now, so here's the thing. Now I'm trying to say, and now I'm in the pickle. I'm in the pickle of, do I explain? Oh, no, I wasn't going there. No, what we were talking about was I was saying there's a foreshadowing on the show of a potential fiance that happens to be an attractive female, and then the name Shannon came into play. Or do I play along with the fact that she's elated over the moon of the fact that I'm saying Shannon foreshadowing fiance? Which do I go with here? Do I go with the first
I think
and I
you
get
have to
credit
go
for
first
being the
here.
honest guy? Or do I go with the second and play along with it and now the heat's on?
I think you have to go with the first.
Meaning I've got to just come clean?
Yeah, because I think she's gonna be on the edge of her seat now. Who knows, Jake, for the rest of her life, potentially waiting, and she could be on the deathbed and be like, "You never did propose."
Okay, now we've gone a little far. But yeah, so you're saying I need to just be honest with this, right?
Yeah, so you can either
Because I'm basically looking right now like sweetheart boyfriend of the year.
What you could do is you could just pull it up on YouTube or whatever. I can send you the MP3 file of that segment, and you can play it for her. That way, you don't have to do the explaining, and it was all right there in the audio form.
That's not bad. But then what happens if then now this is the pickle, right? Now we've gone from we're all excited for the first round pick to or we're all excited tonight for the Colts second round pick, which is their first pick of the, and then just like the Alec Pierce thing, it's like, well, they traded down, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. Which maybe somebody could say that's already, I don't know. But what I'm saying is there a buildup then? And then I'm like, well, actually, put on socks that have like the little rubber thing on the bottom because I'm pulling the rug out from underneath you. This is, I don't know which way to go with this.
Just gotta be true. Gotta be truth.
Okay.
Gotta tell her the truth, Jake. It may break her heart, but it's better than keeping her hopes up for the rest of her life.
Okay. You think that is, I don't think those hopes are there. Didn't she call in the show one time?
She has called into the show one time, yes.
She didn't like being on the show. I don't remember what it was about. Do you remember?
I don't either.
But it was interesting afterwards because we got off the phone and she said,
I think it was because she was in Oklahoma City.
She did go to Game 7.
So I think you may have called her about that. That might have been the only time. I can't remember. Or there was another debate that we were having, and we brought her in on this.
I remember afterwards it was awkward because that night she's like, "No, what was that? Why did you call me today from work?" And I said,
was it to address the fact that you're married to Emily Longnecker? Was that how she was cool with that?
That might have been it. Or it was just the explanation of trying to let her know what it is I do for a living. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, let's get back into where the Colts may be leaning towards the draft tonight, and will they in fact stay where they are slotted? We'll get into it next.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
No surprise here when it comes to draft news. No surprise at all, but this happened about 30 minutes before we got on the air today. Darren Peterson has entered his name into the NBA draft after his lone season at Kansas. And I know that I'm wrong in this before we get back into the Colts draft. I know that I'm wrong in this opinion. But I watched Darren Peterson a handful of games this year, and I will admit, everyone tells me he's this elite scorer, and seemingly every time I watched, it was like, well, he's missed his last 7 shots, but he looks really good in his release. Okay. I didn't really understand. Look, I'm sure
like
he is going to be, and I will be wrong because I look at him and I'm like, I don't know, man. He feels like Evan Turner all over again, but I could be totally wrong.
That's like a baseball player having a really pretty swing, but he bats 190.
Yes.
And strikes out.
This guy hits it
60%
a
of the
ton.
time.
Why didn't anybody else sign him?
Yeah.
Hit him with a curveball. Yeah. I mean, let's be real. Okay, so tonight with the draft, Kevin's going to join us just a couple minutes. We'll get a better feel for this. I looked at, and I'm going to check right here, Eddie, because I meant to look at this earlier. And I don't know, this particular draft, the positioning of, if you look in the first round, okay, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 edge rushers were taken in round number 1. There are still a handful of them that are thought to be pretty darn good players available. And is that going to tempt Chris Ballard because that's the position that he continues to chase? And I get it. I mean, it's not an easy one to find the right guy. Linebacker, though. I think if linebacker is an area of need for the Colts, which it is, in round number 1, only 2 linebackers taken off the board. So does that mean an Anthony Hill of Texas, a C.J. Allen of Georgia? Those positions, linebacker, you might be able to get the best pop where they are. But is that a position? And I'll ask Kevin this. What position can you get the closest in rounds 2 or 3, or, well, I guess we're already in 2, 3 or 4 than what you'd get in 2? Do you get what I'm saying? In other words, if there's a really good linebacker in your second, when you're drafting in the second round and you've got him scored as a 9, but you can still get an 8 in rounds 4 or 5, do you go ahead and wait on linebacker because there's a 9 edge rusher, and then by the time you get to round 4, they're down to a 6? The depth of the position, does the quality of of what's available outweigh the depth or the amount that you would drop for that position if you were to take him? Among the things that we will discuss with Kevin Bowen, we'll do it next.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Hey, Jake. I'm probably guilty as charged on this one, Eddie. It's pretty wild how you give your cell phone number out and tell people to call and text and you never respond. Probably true, although...
Welcome to my world.
No. It gets a little busy before 3 o'clock for me to respond. You know what I mean? A little tied up. And then a lot of times, other stuff after 3. I do try to go back. A lot of times I respond to people at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I go back and read all the texts and then I respond. So my apologies, did not respond in appropriate fashion.
Or,
right?
I'll send you a text at like 1 a.m. and then you try to call me as if I can talk on the phone in a house with another person in it who's asleep.
Say that again?
How do you expect me to pick up the phone at 1 a.m. to talk to you when I'm watching Landman in bed and Olivia's asleep next to me?
Whisper.
No.
I mean, you get better priorities?
I'm not at the Masters.
Sounds like you're not the master either, right?
No.
You leave the master bedroom. That's what you do. Duty calls. It's important stuff. Talk about Landman.
You're expecting me to pause watching Landman to talk to you on the phone about the show?
Yes.
When I can just watch it and then talk to you about it?
You don't know what I'm calling about. I might be calling to say I'm feeling under the weather and you're doing the show tomorrow.
Okay.
There goes the big opportunity, huh? I got news for you, Eddie. When opportunity knocks, you can't say you're busy in bed. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm just being real. Kevin Bowen is, of course, on the Fan Morning Show. You hear him from 7 to 10 a.m., along with Jeff Rickard and James Boyd. He joins us now on the program. Kevin, any surprises from you in round 1 of the draft?
There's a Mike Vrabel joke in there somewhere about opportunity knocking when you're in bed, but I'm not witty enough to find out what exactly that joke is. Probably Ty Simpson to the Rams. When you think about a team like LA and their urgency with Matthew Stafford's age to win a Super Bowl and their F them picks philosophy, that was certainly not that. Maybe Cornell Tate going 4 overall to Tennessee. I've been curious what Vegas odds have been of like, hey, the first Ohio State player selected. Not sure it would have been Cornell Tate there. Those are probably a couple that stood out to me.
Interesting in talking yesterday with the reporter from the Titans, and he said that Tennessee just needs playmakers, right? They just need playmakers, and Tate was one of the names that we mentioned yesterday. I thought, and let me give you an area here, Kevin, where I'm probably stretching, but it does relate to a couple of areas of interest to you. I know that you are a Notre Dame football fan. You saw plenty of Jeremiah Love. He is undoubtedly an elite talent. I think we saw that by Arizona just saying we cannot pass on this at 3. That would presumably lead one to believe that they're going to want a younger quarterback to eventually grow with Love. That's the idea when you get skilled players like that. I'm not saying that he would be their answer, but is Arizona a possibility and one of the few perhaps in the Anthony Richardson trade potential?
I guess, possibly. Well, they just have every other Colt quarterback, don't they?
That's right.
Brissett, Gardner Minshew, and now I don't think Anthony Richardson would be, I don't know if Gardner Minshew maybe is the better way to put it would be looking for Anthony Richardson and giving him a big hug walking through that door. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. I assume Arizona's big swing at quarterback will be coming in next year's draft, not necessarily this year's draft. But yeah, Richardson, honestly, I thought maybe even the Rams, as crazy as that sounds, if you rewind to a couple weeks ago, that news of Jimmy Garoppolo potentially debating retirement, and it's kind of like, okay, what's the second and the third quarterback going to look like out there? Would it behoove Richardson to learn behind a Matthew Stafford type for a year, and then, who knows what the Rams' plan would have been after quarterback? I believe Stephen Holder mentioned earlier in the offseason that Green Bay had some interest in Richardson as well. So, I think a lot of it depends on kind of your flavor of the quarterback depth chart. Do you have the veteran in place and you're trying to increase the ceiling, the potential of the back end of the room, or do you totally have no clue whatsoever what you're doing at quarterback and you just throw something against the wall and hope something sticks?
When you look, Kevin Bowen is our guest. The draft itself, I was just mentioning this. Linebacker's an area of need for the Colts. So too is edge. That's always a need, and certainly Chris Ballard seems transfixed on that position itself. Only 2 linebackers off the board in round 1. Part of that might be because the NFL just doesn't really prioritize that position. But does that mean that there still may be the best player by position available? In other words, if you were to rank each position of need for the Colts, that the top of the position that still has the most of its top level left will be linebacker when they draft. Could they go that way?
Yeah, I think so. And if I remember correctly, I feel like those linebackers that went around 1 are probably thought to be more of pass rushers, not necessarily like your middle linebacker or, playing off the ball like Zaire Franklin and Jermaine Pratt did for you last year. So I don't think any of those types of linebackers got taken. So whether it's Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech or Jack Golday out of Cincinnati or Anthony Hill Jr. out of Texas or C.J. Allen out of Georgia, all those guys are still there. And now the debate becomes, all right, yes, they all are still on the board, but then does that give you more, confidence of trading back? Again, linebacker and the premium nature of it is probably not at the top of the list around the league. So if you're sitting there at 47, and let's say those names I just mentioned, let's say 3 of them are still there, would you try and move back 10 spots, banking on, one of them still being there as long as you obviously evaluated them somewhat close together? So, I think that's part of the dilemma. Again, scarcity-wise, defensive end, I think, remains the biggest need, just because that position matters more in my eyes. So that's probably the route I would try to look into first.
I'll tell you one area, Kevin, that I think we don't talk about. Well, I shouldn't say you don't, that I haven't talked a lot about, but I haven't seen as much about it as well, that it wouldn't surprise me if the Colts just said, you know what, we're going to go unconventional here against the grain. I remember when they took Reggie Wayne, there were people that were like, Reggie Wayne, like they don't, they need defense. Like, what are they doing? But they couldn't pass on him, and obviously that worked out. Could receiver be something that they use? Could they go receiver with their first selection tonight?
Yeah, I think that's kind of next up. If you want to put defensive end linebacker in a tier, I think that next tier would probably be wide receiver and corner. And again, some people would probably say, hey, I actually think that might belong in the first tier. So I don't think it's that crazy. Now, I'm probably a little bit more on, okay, how has the game of football changed over the last 5 to 10 years? Well, it's turned into a much more of a pass-happy, certainly college football, the 7-on-7 infusion. So, therefore, I think there are more wideouts. And, not to say every day 3 wideout's going to turn into Pierre Garçon, but I think the ability to try and draft one on the final day of the draft and that guy turning into being your, 3rd wideout for 5 years, I think that is something to explore. If you look at it, Ballard has drafted some pretty good wideouts early in the draft, but if you look at day 3, really nothing of note whatsoever. Darius Fountain never stuck. Deion Kane never stuck. Mike Strawn never stuck. Who else? I feel like there's another one that you could throw into that category there that just really never panned out. Guys like Ashton Dulin and Chester Rogers probably have been undrafted guys that have had more staying power.
Wasn't there a Derek Rogers also? Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, that would have been the Grigson era. Desmond Patman is maybe the one I was thinking of. But yeah, Derek Rogers, he actually had a huge play that comeback against Kansas City, years ago in the playoffs. So I kind of view wideout a little bit more in that light. But yeah, I can understand if people say, hey, let's sit down and look at this and look at the depth chart. And now Alec Pierce is going to miss, several months with an ankle injury. Some wide receiver insurance could go a long way.
Okay, I'm pulling up right now, by the way, the Colts draft history. You ready? Here are your wide receivers that the Colts have selected over the past in the Ballard era. A.D. Mitchell, obviously. Anthony Gould. Did you mention Anthony Gould?
Yeah, I've always kind of looked at him more as a kick returner. But yeah,
I would agree with that. Mike Strawn. Mike Strawn was the one that, there was so much promise and expect. Oh, he's got a big body. He's going to be a good player. Michael Pittman Jr., we know. Desmond Patton did have that huge catch in Arizona, wasn't it, where he had his one shining moment?
Yep.
And then Paris Campbell. Didn't mention Paris Campbell. Reese Fountain, you mentioned him. Deion Kane. Deion Kane got to play in a celebrity basketball game with me during summer celebration, and I basically stalked him about Clemson the whole time. And that was really his one moment. And Philip Dorsett in 15. Yeah, it's been a while. But that would not surprise me to go with that position. I also wanted to ask you about this. I was in here this morning taping some things, so I did not hear. I apologize. I think I'm basically Tom Hanks in Castaway is the only man on this island because everybody's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about, little five. I found it, weird is the wrong word, disappointing maybe somewhat, that Indiana had a very fine moment as a program in what should be a celebration with Mendoza going number 1 and Cooper going in the first round as well, and yet they were doing their spring game while it was all taking place. Unfortunate circumstance, I guess, and I understand, but Kevin, my understanding is you might have insinuated also that you found it not bad, but just kind of like, am I wrong?
Yeah, I just think it's Curt Cignetti does what Curt Cignetti wants, and he doesn't care 2 iotas about, I need to be Ryan Day and be present at the draft. And obviously, Mendoza and Cooper weren't at the draft, but even at their draft parties per se, or Marcus Freeman or whoever the other head coaches were that were there. I do believe they have had the spring game, I want to say, on the Thursday night of the draft in I think each of Cignetti's years, maybe just 2 of them, but it does seem to be a little bit where it is on the calendar. For example, Notre Dame's is tomorrow at 2:00. Well, obviously tomorrow, to your point, there is the Little 500, which, again, that probably, as crazy as it sounds, takes precedent down there, given the history of that event there. So I just think Cignetti doesn't give two, what. I mean, I actually watched the spring game. They paused for maybe 45 seconds to watch Mendoza on the Jumbotron. The offense I think they maybe had 4 plays, and then they punted on their first possession. Mendoza gets drafted, and then next thing you know, the second unit's out there and playing. So I just don't think Cignetti's about the glitz and the glamour. Honestly, a big thing is, this, him driving the pace car for the 500. I mean, I think he says no to pretty much everything else. And that's the one thing that he has looked at and said, yeah, I guess.
Well, he said that, right?
That makes sense. Yeah, and he just says no to every other gala, fundraiser, all those speaking engagements there. So yeah, I think that's just how he beats to his own drum, and it's all about next year.
Will the Colts tonight draft in the initial spot they are slated to do? So 47, right?
Yeah, I'll say no. I just think if they want to accomplish what I believe Chris Ballard wants to accomplish, they need to have another, decent quality dart throw at it. So, can you acquire something else in the top 100? Now, again, I can hear people out and say, wow, you're really going to move back another 10 spots, which means you're not going to draft anybody in the first, 55 selections of the draft. That is pretty I'd be hard-pressed to think how many times in their history have they drafted nobody in the first 50, 55 selections of a draft. There can't be many drafts that look like that. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I would assume they do try and trade back.
By the way, Kevin, did you hear, and I know not because, you've got a life, so you wouldn't have been listening to the show 20 minutes ago. Did you hear the pickle that I'm in? I asked Eddie for his advice. I don't know that Eddie's the most sound Dr. Phil here. Can I run past you the pickle I'm in and then get your advice, Kevin, on what I do here?
Oh, sure. Yeah, okay. I'm all ears.
So yesterday, have you watched the show Landman, Kevin? Let me begin with that. Have you watched the show Landman?
No, but I did hear Eddie's watching it in bed when you're trying to call him.
That also is uncomfortable. So yesterday we were discussing the show. Eddie was discussing that he had now begun watching the show Landman, and there are a number of attractive female characters in the program. And so I said, Eddie, who do you find to be the hottest woman on the show? And Eddie was very uncomfortable with this because he then said, well, my significant other listens to the show. And I said, well, I mean, you're being respectful here. And he was mentioning a few of the female characters. And I said, well, what about the fiance? And then I said, oh, wait a minute. I might be foreshadowing a part of the show that you're not familiar with yet in terms of a development here. So my apologies on the foreshadowing of fiance, but I'm curious if you think she's hot. Now, several people reached out to Shannon because in the, I don't know if maybe they were north of 46th Street and the signal wasn't good or what the problem was, But what they heard was Shannon, attractive, foreshadowing fiance. So Shannon last night sent me a text with several heart emojis, very excited, saying, it's my understanding that you have created on the show this foreshadowing of the fact that I'm the fiance. Now, do I roll with that and go with boyfriend of the year, how kind and how nice I am? Or am I honest in terms of the interpretation being incorrect here and possibly incriminating myself as to being insensitive?
Boy, sounds like you might be getting on a knee at the Yard of Bricks coming up here in the month of May, man. Or, maybe the highest point of Crown Hill, wherever, what are your, favorite spots around town?
Would it be inappropriate if I got engaged at a cemetery?
Well, knowing you, with Peter Brady taking pictures somewhere behind, some tree, it would seem to fit perfectly, honestly.
Peter Brady's coming to the 500, by the way.
How about that? So is he? I have you given away your spotter spot yet?
Yeah, the spotter. I had a guy that I had on the show last year in the Road America race for IndyCar. Santino Ferrucci at the end of the race ran out of fuel, and he was walking along the circuit to go back to pit road, and some fan from Wisconsin threw him a beer over the fence, and so Ferrucci shotgunned the beer, and that guy then was brought as a guest to the race in Milwaukee, and I met him, and he was just he was totally fun character. So I had him on the show here and just said, hey, you want to come be my spotter? So he's actually coming with his dad to the race. He's going to spot for me. So my spotter position, unfortunately, has been – but I think Peter Brady's coming to the parade. He's going to sit with me and Shannon at the parade.
Nice. We got to get him in a car. We got to get him on a float, something like that.
He said he doesn't want – he said, I'm just coming as a fan. Now, he doesn't know this, but he maybe he witnesses maybe I do it at the parade. What do you think with Peter Brady?
Oh, look at that. Perfect right there. Yeah, well, let me know where you're sitting. I'll make sure that I'm somewhere and, make sure I can witness this.
I like the image of Peter Brady hiding behind the tree, taking photos, hiding behind John Dillinger's grave, getting a couple snapshots of the moment. Very romantic, right?
Everything Shannon's ever dreamed of, right?
That's right. By the way, lastly, Kevin, did I hear this correctly? Chris Ballard got on you about salary cap. Is that right? Are we off of receivers now and now it's salary cap?
I believe so, yes. We have moved on, which, the whiteout one, I believe the month after he had those comments, they drafted Alec Pierce, so that worked out. I don't know how this one's going to work out. But, yes, he told me to forget the exact phrase, but I believe one day you'll learn, Kevin, in referencing how the salary cap works. And then he repeated that several times.
Okay. Did you ask if he has?
Well, I think there was a lot there. Yeah, I did follow up with him, maybe a little bit more behind the scenes there. So we had a conversation about it. Yes.
Was it a cordial one?
Yeah. I think that. Yeah, I think so. I'm speaking for myself. I don't know if he would echo the same things, but yeah.
All right, fair enough. Big weekend plans other than the draft, Kev?
No, man. Hopefully Notre Dame spring game, which shows you where I'm at.
You know what? I meant to ask you this also. My apologies. When I was at the race in Long Beach, I ran into a Notre Dame football fan that said the disappointment for Notre Dame not getting into the college football playoff was the fact that they're the one team that would have beaten Indiana. And this person said, I watched them absolutely blow Indiana off the field last year, and they would have done the same again this year. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are I was more confident about Notre Dame getting on a title run this year than I was the previous year when they got to the national championship game. So, yes, hot take from a very biased fan. Notre Dame would have won it all had they got in.
Think they would have beaten Indiana?
I do.
Okay. Fair enough. That's why they play the games, right? You know what helps is to win one of your first two so that way you can get in, right?
For sure. And C.J. Carr's first ever start at Miami, they lost by 3 points. Don't think that is an egregious loss by any means. So, and they lost to Texas A&M in week 2 on a 4th and goal at the end. So, yeah, you certainly got to win those games. But, again, not egregious losses. I think they were playing very good football at the end of the year with a first-year defensive coordinator and a first-year starting quarterback playing better than they did in August and September. But the playoff is the playoff, and they should have won one of the first 2.
Okay. All right. I'll let Peter Brady know. I'll give him directions to Crown Hill. We'll loop you in.
Yeah. Well, make sure IMPD knows.
All right. Sounds good. Kevin Bowen joining us on the program. You will hear him 7 o'clock. Appreciate it, Kevin. Have a good weekend. 7 to 10, the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, and Jeff Rickard. I do think, by the way, now, when I told First that Chris Knight was coming to the 500, First was like, oh, well, we got to do, and I'll give Chris Knight credit. He's like, look, I'm just coming as a fan. Just coming as a fan. And he mentioned on the show, he loved Eddie. Oh, you weren't here when he was on. He absolutely loved. So I didn't tip this part of the story. But when I went to the Brady Bunch house and Chris Knight met us, and I told everybody about the T-shirt that I had custom made for the visit.
What was the T-shirt, by the way?
There is an episode of the Brady Bunch where there's a bully that continues to make fun of Cindy at school for her lisp. And he says, baby talk, it's a wonder you can walk. And the bully's name is Buddy Hinton. And Peter escorts Cindy to school and eventually gets in a fight with Buddy Hinton. And Buddy Hinton gives him a black eye, and then there's kind of a rematch. And spoiler alert here, my apologies if you've not watched this episode in the last 55 years. And Peter then hits Buddy Hinton, knocks his tooth loose, and Buddy Hinton then has a lisp. And everybody makes fun of him because now he's the baby talk, it's a wonder you can walk. And Peter Brady, being the scrupulous individual that he is, says, guys, don't make fun of him. You didn't like that when he was doing it to you. So I wore a shirt to the Brady Bunch house with Chris Knight, who played Peter Brady. When we had him on the show, I said, hey, I just texted you a photo of the T-shirt. And he loved it. And I don't think he was humoring me, and let me tell you why. During the tour of the house, at one point, he was showing Michael Young and Ryan Marine a different section, and I had gone out in the backyard to shoot some stuff in the backyard and began talking to Christopher Knight's wife, who's as nice as can be. She's a graduate of Miami of Ohio, grew up in Chicago. And I had on my shirt that says, Buddy Hinton Fight Club, 1970. And she said, by the way, where did you get that shirt? And it's why I had it custom made on the internet. And she goes, I know, because after he was on the radio with you, he showed me the photo of it and was like, how awesome is this shirt? So as a thank you for our tour, I got him, not mine, I bought another T-shirt for him, as well as a Peter Revson pole position 55th Indianapolis 500 shirt, because Peter Revson was his favorite driver, he said. So, I mean, he is clearly a race fan. Prepare to qualify.
Prepare to qualify.
Yes. Peter Revson did exactly that for the 55th Indianapolis 500, and so I sent the shirt. Peter Brady in a Peter Revson shirt. Now, I can't tell you how thrilled and excited it will make me if it comes down to it and we're at the parade and he wears the Peter Revson T-shirt. Or the Buddy Hinton Fight Club T-shirt. Maybe he'll wear both for the 500. It is a Friday. It is a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. You know what that means? A feel-good story and making sure that all of you are taking care of that heart and the importance of the heart scans, women in particular. We've had a lot of important conversations about that, which is greatly appreciated. But we'll bring it all round, and we'll do it again next.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It is a Friday, bottom of the 2 o'clock hour. You know what that means. Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. Brought to you by the great folks at Franciscan Health. You know, where you can do 500,000 things in New York, right? You can do a lot of those things right here in Indiana, including 2 young men that learned that through a long process that got them to the point that we can celebrate today. And I'll get to that in a minute. One of the things you should do amongst the million things that you can do is get that heart scan. You know, I was yesterday because with the mini marathon coming up, I run the mini every year with my cardiologist. Not even because I want the security feeling of knowing that, wow, you know, if something goes wrong here, it's probably helpful, but more so because I think everybody knows by now, I mean, we've done it for 6 years in a row now, that when I was getting ready to go in to have the angioplasty done for my widowmaker when I had 100% blockage, I was trying to gauge just how bad the situation was that I was in. And so I asked, hey, if I make it out of this and I do everything you tell me to do, will I be able to run the mini marathon? And he said, well, there's a lot that goes into that. I said, I'm aware. And this was 7 months away from the mini marathon, but I had done the mini every year. Now, when I say run it, I mean, I'm at this age, you know, I don't go out there and just run the whole thing. I had done that in my earlier years. Now I do a run-walk combo, truthfully. But nonetheless, symbolically speaking, we have then done it now every year together. And so yesterday we went for kind of a warm-up, did a 5-mile run, and then afterwards we're talking just about, you know, kind of the whole journey of it all. And in talking about just heart health and the importance of so many things, including the heart scan. And it's just $49 a heart scan from Franciscan Health. And when you get it at Franciscan, you're not just getting a heart scan, you're getting it from the place that is number one heart program in Indiana for cardiology by Health Grades, number one in Indiana for interventional coronary care by CareChex. And the heart scan, just $49, is very easy. It's non-invasive. If you're like me, I am not a fan of needles. No worries there. It's non-invasive. It is basically a scan. Takes about 10, 15 minutes. And it gives you a calcium score of your heart, but with it a heart health risk assessment where you can begin to get an idea with that, just the footprint, the baseline of where your heart health is, and make sure that you are staying on top of it. And talking yesterday about it, we were just talking about the number of people that may have a heart issue and the body is trying to tell them about it, and they're avoiding or are naive to the warning signs. And that is so important because time is so important, because the heart is a muscle. And if you think about, and I'm not a cardiologist, but I know this, if you honestly, think of a steak. If you leave a steak just sitting on the counter long enough, eventually it goes bad, right? I mean, it becomes kind of flabby, gelatinous. It's what can happen to your heart if it's not moving, if it's not beating. And so therefore, if you have a heart attack and part of your heart as a result stops moving, you get basically a muscle atrophy, for lack of a better term, that's then too hard to come back from for that portion of your heart, and life's never the same again. And that's why timing is so important, to make sure that when the warning signs are there, you are immediately getting taken care of. And for women, that is oh so important, because the women's warning signs are a little bit different than men. So women, it is really important to be proactive about your heart health, and the heart scan is an excellent way to begin doing that. Men, you kind of get that pain in the left arm, you get that feeling of heartburn. Women, a little bit different feeling, maybe a tightness in the neck and the shoulder area. Easier things to write off as something else. But go ahead and get the first look. $49, 833-238-0688 is the telephone number. I want to go back to 2022 and 2023, and I want to go back to this for young people that are listening, in particular, or parents of young people that are listening. Think about the year 2022. You're a kid on the north side of Indianapolis. You're playing a number of different sports. and you really enjoy playing football, but you play different sports because we talk about the importance sometimes of being more than just a one-sport athlete. And you're starting to get some attention, and you're starting to get recruited. And one of the bigger schools to recruit you happens to be not necessarily the best school in your sport. But Indiana comes calling and wants you to go and play football there. And you look at it and you say, you know what? I'm a 3-star athlete, 3-star recruit. And what do we really read into and rate? Sometimes I think the recruiting scouting services themselves are 3-star. But more so than that, at your position at wide receiver, you are the 80th best wide receiver in America. 80th. You're rated as the 14th best player in your state. You're rated as the 299th, you're the 80th best wide receiver, 299th best player in the country, and the 9th best wide receiver in your class in your high school. Now, as for being the 14th biggest recruit in the state, a year later, there's a kid, 20 minutes to the west of you, because you're at Lawrence North. There's a kid, a class below you, that's rated as the 14th best recruit and a 3-star athlete that also has played a couple different sports but gets an opportunity to play at your rival at Purdue. And you might look at it and say, I'm going to line up across from that guy because even though he is the 990th ranked player in the country, he also is the 14th biggest recruit in the state a year later. He's the 85th recruited safety, ranked safety, I should say. But he gets an opportunity and says, you know what? I'm listed as the 74th best safety in the country. And a year ago, I saw the guy that was the 80th best wide receiver in the country going to Indiana. I'll go to his rival, Purdue. And in the case of Omar Cooper Jr., the first from Lawrence North, to go to Indiana, the first, of those two players that I'm talking about. He goes to Indiana. He redshirts right away. In an era where we are all about home runs and not base hits. He redshirts and at times thinks about transferring, but sticks it out and sticks through an Indiana program that goes through this renaissance and this almost overnight change with this new belief and this wind of change and the quarterback position that now is finding guys open even when it's in the very back of the end zone to place the ball where only you, the former 299th prospect recruit, can go up and get it. And when you do that, you know that only creates the drama, the anticipation that your team is going to go into the college football playoff, and when it does, it's going to have to face the Oregon Ducks. You go into the college football playoff to face the Oregon Ducks, who granted you beat in the regular season, but now you're going in and you're playing them in the college football playoff. And lined up for the Oregon Ducks is a guy that won a pretty big game for Oregon this year, who was formerly the 990th best player in the country, that went to Purdue and ultimately transferred to Oregon. And that means that it was a circuitous route for Dylan Thieneman. That means that it was not one that went straight from 5-star to the minimum 3 years and then out. These are two players that are local kids, local young men now, that both heard their name called in the first round of the NFL draft. Thieneman to the Chicago Bears, meaning he may be playing in Indiana again in a couple of years. And Omar Cooper Jr., of course, to the New York Jets. The point I'm trying to make here is this. If you're a young person right now listening to my voice, if you're the parent of a young person that has a dream, the odds are still almost astronomical that you're going to end up in the NFL. But Sometimes life comes not with the immediacy of the home run, but continuing to get base hits and doing what needs to be done and taking each step at the time and going through the process of allowing yourself to grow and simply get better each day versus the day before. And not dwelling on whether someone says you were the 990th best player or the 299th best player. Not dwelling on that, but rather dwelling on what you can be versus what someone says you are. And that's what those two guys did. And they went through that process. And does that mean that if you're listening to my voice that you are going to, in fact, become an NFL player? No. It means that whatever it is that you design and see yourself to do, that a year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, you may not get to that ultimate goal. But so long as you continue to move and progress forward by dwelling on what it is that you want to be for yourself versus what you are labeled to be in the moment. That's the important lesson there. And for those two guys, it was a great evening last night. And it was a great night for Fernando Mendoza, who also himself, not a high recruit, not a high prospect, had to go the circuitous route. Ended up in California and then in Indiana and the Heisman and the national trophy or the national championship. There are 9 players, 9, in the history of football that have been the number 1 draft pick at quarterback that have won a Super Bowl. 9. And of those 9, 3 of them won it with the franchise that actually drafted them. Because sometimes it's not about where you start, it's about what happens after that. And we'll see what happens with Mendoza. But in the case of the pride of Westfield and the pride of Lawrence North, I say job well done and lesson learned about making sure it's about where you move towards versus where you started. Is J&V here today or is he out, Eddie?
J&V is here today. Another name to watch, Jake, tomorrow, maybe even tonight, Caden Curry.
Yeah, Center Grove.
Yes.
Center Grove. And I think D'Angelo Pons could be in play for the Colts as well, but that's not obviously a local high school product. But yes, Caden Curry, fabulous talent, and he was a one-man wrecking crew for the Buckeyes at times this year. All right, we'll find out what John's got cooking. Again, the heart scans, $49, Franciscan Health. You can pay out of pocket. You can self-refer. 833-238-0688 is the telephone number. Or, of course, as always, franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripe. Surfside is the best this time of year in particular. Getting set for outdoor activities, then Surfside is perfect for that. Lemonade with a splash of vodka or iced tea with a splash of vodka. And the new Super Light, talking about sports drinks and a variety of flavors. You can do a variety of pack in those as well. Under 100 calories for the Super Light and just 100 calories for Surfside with no carbonation, so smooth and easy to drink. Surfside, look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages. Please be 21 and please consume responsibly.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Eddie, what are your big weekend plans?
I'm doing a walk for pancreatic cancer tomorrow morning with Olivia.
Okay. Where's that? Do you know?
I think it's downtown at I know we start at White River, I think.
Okay.
So I'm doing that tomorrow morning, working a little bit, and then work the Fever game tomorrow, preseason opener. It's the New York Liberty 2:30 pregame with John Nolan and Bria Goss right here on the Fan. That's sandwiched in the middle between of our draft day coverage for day 3 that we'll have on the Fan as well. And then Sunday, working at the other job and probably doing some yard work. Building a patio, Jake. That's what we're working on right now.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, building a patio, by the way, there were several times I was going to do that, but
Oh, yeah?
yeah, but unfortunately I procrastinated and that project was always on deck.
Okay. No, that's not a good one.
What's that?
No.
You liked my one earlier, didn't you? You didn't want to admit it, but you liked my joke earlier.
I didn't like that one either. That was really bad.
No, actually, I think probably you go home and you say, I heard a funny one today, and then you repeat it. That's cool, though.
No, never do that.
Tomorrow night, by the way, I look forward to this, and I feel a little bit uncomfortable with it, admittedly, but
Are you and Derek doing something together?
no, I'm speaking to the Auxiliary for Early Education, the Guild for Early Education Auxiliary, the auxiliary for, I believe that's correct in the title, early education, but basically a lot of teachers. And my 5th grade teacher is going to be there. I've not seen her since the day that I bawled my eyes out the day that I found out I had Mrs. Umamura for the 5th grade, because she was rumored to be the teacher that gave the most homework. And she was tough. I mean, she was a demanding is the wrong word. She was a very strong disciplinarian, but she developed in all of us just incredible habits. I still remember so many things that she taught. So she's turning 100 this year. I have not seen her since, I was the Allisonville Elementary School spelling bee runner-up. And she's going to let me know, I think this weekend, the results of my appeal from that, because I still think it's ridiculous that Jody Shear won. But I look forward to that tomorrow night a lot. Tonight, Rathskeller, I'm hoping the weather cooperates. There is just nothing better this time of year than seeing my buddies at the Elect playing at the Rathskeller in the beer garden tonight. And so I look forward to that. And then, of course, the draft as well, and we'll see what the Colts do. D'Angelo Pons, we mentioned it yesterday, he is intriguing at that spot because corner, wide receiver, edge, linebacker, a lot of things they can do. We'll see if they stick in that position. J&B has arrived. The crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number.
Yes.
Big show lined up, John?
Large show lined up. Just lined up as hell.
Is that your Sabres shirt, by the way?
It is a Buffalo Sabres, the new one. I like the old one better.
Totally.
They
wore the blue with the yellow in
Yes.
Game 2. It was awesome. Went a little bit better last night. But
Yeah, Rob Ray, formerly of the Sabres, will join us coming up a little bit later on today.
Nice.
So, yeah, Matt Godbout, who used to work with the Colts, did a great job there. He works now with the Sabres and sent me a bunch of gear and then got me in contact with Rob Ray, and Rob Ray's going to come on. So
the Sabres are, I told you my two buddies and I adopted them this year, right?
Yeah.
We've been watching their games, and they made a general manager change midway through the year, and it's starting to pay dividends now, right? I mean, they're the hottest team in the league, right?
Yeah, they are. They are. Well, and it's weird because so far the way that it has looked, what are they, 2-1, I think, right now against the
2-1,
Bruins? They go through phases where they can't score, and then they'll score in bunches,
Correct.
and then they can't score again.
Game 1, they scored, 3 in the third?
Yeah.
And you were kind of waiting for that. They lost game 2, 4-2. You were waiting for them to kind of get going, and didn't happen. But the Sabres remind me of the mid-'90s Pacers, where all of a sudden it just all comes together, and it's like, and then it was fun, right?
No, it's been really enjoyable to watch. We'll watch the Canadians and the Lightning again later tonight. I've been watching the Senators a little bit, not be able to score. And, yeah, it's been fun. I'm enjoying it.
Did you watch the draft?
I did.
How many
a lot
were there?
of it. Not every pick, but most.
How many were there? Be honest.
Well, hell, I don't know. They look like a lot, but I don't know by what measure a lot might be.
I got a kick out of Schefter retweeting that there were 320,000 people there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Come on. Like, have a little bit of journalistic credibility about you that you're not just spitting out whatever the NFL just told you, right?
Yeah, I think he kind of shook that loose years ago. So I don't know. I don't really know if he's that concerned about it anymore.
You're a big fan, right?
I'm a huge fan. He's a huge fan of mine too. We're big fans of one another.
I can't remember. Are you allowed to divulge what it was? I can't remember what it was.
I called him a douchebag on social media, and then he sent it to the Colts. Actually, to my bosses. No, I'm sorry. He sent it to the ESPN bosses, and then they sent it to the bosses, the former bosses, and the Colts got involved with it somehow. I had to go to meetings and bull crap like that. Didn't have to apologize, but they blackballed me from Radio Row during the Super Bowl when we were over the JW.
Yeah.
They blackballed me. But instead, Matt Taylor at the time was my producer. He landed Adam Schefter, so I couldn't give a damn if I had anybody on from ESPN by that point. I don't care. Guys, keep walking. But no, Van Pelt actually told somebody I worked with that he wasn't allowed to go on with me because of that little thing. And then he unloaded on Chris Hagan to me once about me, which was classic. Had no idea Hagan was my good friend, and unloaded on me.
Just because of one thing you said on Twitter?
He called me cuss words and stuff.
That's okay.
Yeah, can he get his ass whipped if he said that to my face?
Did
But
you
no,
retract your statement about him?
No, because he was. That's how he was. He was acting. I don't think he is all the time. It's like all of us. Sometimes you get struck by a douchey moment, and you regret it. And he should have regretted that moment, and he didn't.
So what's on the big program, did you say?
So what we got? Joel Erickson of the Star, Don Fisher, voice of the Hoosiers, Rob Ray, the former Buffalo Sabre. There's a rule in the NHL after him, which is pretty cool. And I think maybe Mike Wells a little bit later on. So we're loaded up and good to go. And I've got my selections, what the Colts will do in rounds 2 and 3. By the way, the Colts backed me up in that incident, too, so that was nice.
Oh, they said they also said he is?
Well, they didn't go that far, but they backed me up. It was pretty nice of them.
Take over tomorrow night?
Take over tomorrow night. We got a lot of 90s going on. You like the 90s when I do that?
Oh, of course.
Like, I get some that suggest not to do the 90s, but it's weird. Most of the people dig it. I'm assuming it's just what age you might
I'll
be.
throw in an Oasis tune for you tomorrow
we
night.
can do that. Don't look back in anger. That sounds so Beatley. It does. Sounds good.
But when they do it live, it's pretty awesome.
I bet it is.
All right, John's up next. We'll be back with you on Monday. I appreciate you listening to Query & Company.